Hello, hello, hello. Okay, fashionably late. Let's get things started. Welcome aboard, everybody. My name is Brian Ego, and I am the evil overlord of Glasgow Skeptics. Before I hand over to Megan, just a little bit about us. Firstly, though, has anybody here ever been to a Glasgow Skeptics event before? Yeah, hooray for you people with your hands up. So the others are either newbies to Glasgow Skeptics, or you're here because we're doing this very, very exciting joint event with Scottish Secular Society, which is great. So if you're a kind of a Scottish Secular Society member, welcome. This is our little home for Glasgow Skeptics here, and we hope you enjoy yourself enough to maybe come along to some of our events, and we'll come along to some of yours, and it'll be a beautiful symbiotic relationship. So Glasgow Skeptics, just to give you an idea, is a non-commercial grassroots organisation committed to promoting science and understanding, critical thinking and freedom of expression, which usually means we do kind of sciencey talk. So this one's a little bit out of the ordinary for us, and I think maybe there's a few people out there that are kind of scratching their head a little bit thinking, why are skeptics doing something with the Scottish Secular Society? Well, it's definitely not just because we're mates, okay? That's purely coincidence. The core principles of skepticism, or scientific skepticism, is trying to use critical thinking and evidence-based methods to make good decisions in life. That's as an individual and as a society. And I think most of you, if not all of you, will agree here that some of the things we're going to be discussing tonight are very much the result of people not using the skills of critical thinking and not making good decisions either for themselves or for society as a whole, as we found out to our horrible terror when we saw the events that happened over in Florida last night or the night before. So I think it's a really good fit for us as a couple of organisations. I'm very excited to be running this with the guys from the Scottish Secular Society. And on that note, in order to introduce themselves and the panellists, may I please hand over, with your applause, to Megan Crawford. Here we go.
Hi. So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. So yes, this is an unusual night for the Scottish Secular Society because we usually meet the first Thursday of every month at the TS building across town. But like Brian said, we are two organizations that work really well together. So sometimes we do these joint events. Hope to do more in the future. On your seats, a little housekeeping sort of stuff is a membership sign up, but it's also a newsletter sign up. So if you'd like to receive information about our future events, we promote our friends' events as well because we're all mutually involved because that's the way it goes with this kind of society. It's there, and then also a flyer for our next talk, which will be the first Thursday of July. It's the 7th, and the information is there. Okay, so that's out of the way. Tonight's talk, we've been looking forward to this, and we've been wanting to do this for a very long time. Sectarian violence and sectarian thinking and acting and teaching and just the all-pervasive mentality of sectarianism in our society and others is, in a word, damaging. And has been around for a long time, and I would say that many of us are very surprised to still run into it, and many of us see it as everyday occurrence. It's what it is. So we actually have from our title, do we accept it? Is this something that we just keep accepting, or is it something we don't? So you're welcome to tweet and use that hashtag, and we've got ours up there, our little Twitter tags. I'm not much of a Twitter person, but I'm working on it. I'm working and I'm trying to figure out how to effectively express secular views of a Scottish nature in 140 characters or less. And I'm working on it. So before we get in tonight, I talked with Boyd earlier about this and some of our board members. I'm going to take a moment to acknowledge what happened in Orlando, Florida. I think it would be wrong to not say something about this. It's not necessarily sectarian violence that happened, but it definitely was religiously charged, hateful act. And it was nothing more than an act of pure hate that, yes, on one hand is absolutely and utterly disgusting that it is something that still happens. But I want to remind everybody that for all of us that were utterly shocked at seeing that happen, and every time we're shocked at seeing a mass murder, a religiously charged murder, that is very telling of the society that we're building, that we have come from, and that we're going towards. Because that shock means that we are a society that doesn't expect that. We are not a society that is generally probably breeding that mentality. And these are outliers. These are radicals, as they put them. These are terrorists, absolutely, because they make us question our safety every day. And that's where possibly the real damage continues to after, of course, the real damage are the murdered people. I'm not belittling that. What I'm saying is, it's something to acknowledge. It'll probably come up in conversation tonight, and some of us knew some of the people there, not directly, and it's a very tough thing when you realize somebody's daughter or son is gone. You know, somebody's partner has been completely ripped from their lives forever, and I think it's something we should not ignore. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And if it comes up later, it comes up later. I know we've discussed this. Okay. Now, for our main event, we have a very interesting panel tonight. I think it's probably one of the most brilliant pairings we can have. Two leaders in their fields of interest and talking about sectarian violence from a Christian point of view in Northern Ireland and from the Muslim community. And you live in London now, don't you? Yes, Tehmina lives in London. So I'm going to do my part as the speaker, as the host, and get my phone to work with me and introduce you to Boyd Sleator and Tehmina Kazi. So Boyd Sleator, for 6 months, has been working as the operations coordinator with Northern Ireland Humanists in Belfast. He was one of the founding members and former chairperson of Atheist Northern Ireland, and has been part of the British Humanist Association, and he just came from their conference down in Birmingham. Tehmina Kazi is director of British Muslims for Secular Democracy, a group of Muslim Democrats working to raise awareness about democracy, particularly secular democracy, within the British Muslim communities and the wider public. So she is executive producer and documentary film, of the documentary film Hidden Heart, and was also a freelance consultant for English Pen's Faith and Free Speech in Schools project. So in short, these people are highly, highly busy people who have been working very, very intensely in their respective communities. So the way the format will go tonight will be each of our speakers will talk to us individually about their about what they have to say tonight, and then we will open the floor to Q&A. And like I said earlier, it's going to be more of a discussion and a two-way dialogue between us all. Okay, so we will begin with Tehmina Kazi.
And a very happy Easter, especially to my beloved Christian nation. These were the last words of Glaswegian newsagent Asad Shah on his Facebook page, posted on March 24th, 2016. Just hours later, this hugely popular man, an Ahmadi Muslim, was brutally attacked. Found outside his shop with multiple injuries, he later died in hospital. The suspect, Tanvir Ahmed, is alleged to have stabbed Mr. Shah multiple times and stamped on his head. He apparently travelled 200 miles from Bradford in a premeditated attack. Police in Scotland are sure that this is a religiously motivated murder. This is probably because Ahmadi Muslims are regarded as heretics by many Sunni and even Shia Muslims. They do not believe in the finality of prophethood since Muhammad's death. They are persecuted in Pakistan and have been for many years. It is unbearable to think that someone who reached out to others, no matter what their background, has been extinguished by a mindset that was the antithesis of everything he stood for. Mr. Shah was one of those newsagents who would go the extra mile for every customer. Not only did he remember everyone's names, but he would send people Christmas cards or Eid cards, depending on their religion. He took an interest in people's lives, be they young, old, black, brown, or white. 2 vigils were organised for him, one with 500 people, including Nicola Sturgeon in attendance, in a testament to how loved he was. A fundraising page on GoFundMe has raised over £80,000 for Mr. Shah's family. His widow described him as a kind man who was always smiling. Together with Mr. Shah's siblings, she paid tribute to him on condition of anonymity, hence since the threat of reprisals is all too real. One would expect UK Muslim organisations, particularly those who choose Islamophobia as their rallying call, to be up in arms about such a murder. However, to date, there has been no statement from MEND or MPAC UK. Glasgow Central Mosque put out a statement which decried the murder as abhorrent and unacceptable and said it would stand shoulder to shoulder with all communities to eradicate this intolerance from society. However, this statement appeared to gloss over WhatsApp messages posted by their most senior imam, Maulana Habibur Rahman. Referring to the Pakistani government's execution of Mumtaz Qadri, who had killed anti-blasphemy law campaigner Salman Taseer in 2011, Rahman said, "I cannot hide my pain today. A true Muslim was punished for doing which the collective will of the nation failed to carry out." It is difficult to see how this message has been taken out of context, as the mosque alleged. They inferred that the imam was talking about due process and how this had presumably been lacking in the Mumtaz Qadri and Salman Taseer case. Even if we accept this explanation, it totally misses the point. The treatment of minorities, whether in Pakistan or the UK, is a matter of principle over process. If a group expects to be taken seriously in its attempts to bring communities together, it must abandon supremacist ideologies insofar as they discriminate against others or lead to hate crimes against others. As a general rule, the ethic of reciprocity must guide us here. It's all well and good to advocate for the human rights of one's own community, but what we really need is empathetic advocacy work, where campaigners get to grips with the struggles that other communities face and offer genuine solidarity instead of meaningless platitudes. Glasgow Central Mosque has other figures with questionable links. A BBC investigation has found that Sabir Ali, head of religious events, was formerly president of Sipa-e Sahaba, now known as Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the group which bears responsibility for a number of deadly attacks against Shias and other minorities in Pakistan. South of the border, the Muslim Council of Britain has condemned the killing of Asad Shah, adding that there is no place for hatred of this kind. While this sounds encouraging at first, their own initiatives have not been as inclusive of different sects as one would hope, and they immediately put out a statement after the killing which said that they didn't feel Sunni and Shia Muslims should be, in their words, forced to accept Ahmadis as fellow Muslims. In 2014, they announced a historic interfaith unity statement which solicited signatures from various Muslim groups in an attempt to forge common ground. But, as the blogger John Sargent pointed out, Ahmadi Muslims, both Lahoris and the larger Rabwa branch, but were conspicuous by their absence. Furthermore, Muslim media outlets like Five Pillars, who claim to be promoting normative Islam, previously described the Ahmadi Betel Fatou Mosque in Morden as a temple when it was engulfed in flames during a suspected arson attack in September 2015. The site's deputy editor, Dili Hussain, tweeted in 2014, "I've known monkeys that have a more legitimate claim to Islam than Ahmadis." These sectarian sentiments have spilled over into disputes on planning applications. In March 2016, Tel Marmar reported that a group of Sunni Muslims in Scunthorpe had opposed the establishment of an Ahmadi mosque there. In a showdown that was caught on camera, the word temple was again used to describe the mosque, and one individual suggested that Ahmadis may have come from a banana republic. At least this mosque was eventually accepted by Scunthorpe Council. An application for a similar building in Walsall, which I'd written about in December 2009, was denied after 800 complaints, not from the English Defence League, but from Sunni Muslims. Most disturbingly of all, Khatme Nabuwat, an anti-Ahmadi group with an office in London, congratulated Muslims on the killing of Asad Shah. A number of secular writers and campaigners had reported this Facebook post to the Metropolitan Police. When theological authorities take it upon themselves to decide who is and is not a Muslim, as opposed to respecting how groups and individuals define themselves, it is crystal clear that this leads to breaches of equality and human rights standards. Witness Toha Qureshi, MBE, a trustee of Stockwell Green Mosque, who is known for his supposed love of interfaith activities. He was interviewed for a recent Radio 4 investigation called the Deobandis on the Kill Ahmadis leaflets found in the mosque after Asad Shah's murder. Further to questioning from the BBC, Qureshi not only denied that Khatme Nabuwat was a hate organization, but had the temerity to suggest that Ahmadi Muslims had planted the leaflets themselves. He also tried to imply that Ahmadis do not face particularly serious levels of persecution in Pakistan, a position which runs counter to the research of Human Rights Watch. The links between Stockwell Mosque and Khatme Nabuwat are plain to see. Khatme is written on the mosque's entrance. Further, Qureshi was so incensed by a statement from the former Pakistani ambassador to the UK, Wajid Shamsul Hassan, in which he condemned the Pakistani parliament's unanimous decision to declare Ahmadis as non-Muslims, that Qureshi said he should be tried under blasphemy and treason laws. The MCB has, in turn, removed Stockwell Green Mosque from its list of affiliates, pending an independent investigation. However, many argue that this renders the investigation defunct, as it ends with a disclaimer that the panel shall not involve itself in matters of theology or actions, conduct, or laws in countries other than the United Kingdom. As we've seen, most intra-Muslim sectarianism in the UK results from and is propelled by political and religious disputes in foreign countries. Therefore, this disclaimer seems short-sighted on the investigator's part. What I would really like to see is a statement from groups like the Muslim Council of Britain, which unequivocally and unambiguously defends the right of Ahmadis to refer to themselves as Muslims. I would also like to see religious leaders from both sects express a more positive approach to Sunni Ahmadi marriages, which are, anecdotally, still discouraged. The term moderate Muslim is essentially meaningless when there is so little in the way of positive and proactive action over these major fault lines. Of course, wider society had its own issues with sectarianism, most notably in Northern Ireland, which Boyd will be speaking about. But the difference is that there's been a widespread and concerted effort to address this, both in terms of cross-community social action from religious and non-religious groups, and the full force of the law where appropriate. The best legacy we can leave Asad Shah is to take sectarian hate crime as seriously as far-right attacks on Muslims, and to follow in his footsteps of spreading goodwill to all. Thank you.
Hi there. As you can see, Tehmina's very well organised. She's got her notes in front of her. I have a phone, a pint of water, and a pint of beer in the corner. But to start off, I would like to say that the topic, or the title was sectarianism in the Muslim community and sectarianism in the Christian community of Northern Ireland. And I have to change it slightly because really it's not sectarianism in the Christian community as such, as in Catholics and Protestants fighting each other, although it is. It's to do with unionists and nationalists. people who believe in a united Ireland, people who want to be part of the Union, the United Kingdom. So, although they identify as Catholics or Protestants mostly, I would doubt very much that many of them are practicing Christians, whereas that would be very different, I would say, in the Muslim communities. Northern Ireland has a long history of violence when it comes to unionism and nationalism. And you could go back hundreds of years and blame it on hundreds of things. So really, for me, my starting point is going to be somewhere around about the 1960s and looking at what had happened in the 1960s with regards to the equal rights movement and how Catholics or nationalists were discriminated against. And we had rallies in Northern Ireland in order to try and stop discrimination. And Catholics and Protestants actually got together to bond together in the 60s, to march together, to show that, you know, we wanted equality for all in Northern Ireland. And then Bloody Sunday happened, and people were murdered, and the likes of the IRA and Sinn Féin jumped on board with that and turned it into an us and them issue. And then we had violence for many, many years. And it wasn't religious violence as such. Sure, there were religious overtones to some of it, but it wasn't religious violence in the same way that happens in the Islamic community. But there are parallels. And in 1994, when the Good Friday Agreement happened and we had relative peace, we can see ourselves as somehow, or we would like to be able to see ourselves somehow as some sort of beacon of hope for other countries that have sectarian violence, for other countries where there is an us and them and where people are still being murdered. And yes, we can maybe look to show how the Good Friday Agreement worked in some sense. In a lot of senses it didn't. But we still live in a divided society in Northern Ireland. We still have very few integrated schools, and people are divided along, you go to a state school or you go to a Catholic school, and as it happens, all the Catholics go to Catholic schools, so it just leaves all the Protestants to go to the state schools. And the communities stay divided. And then you have problems with how the children are taught in those schools with regards to our religious education system, which I find out is very similar to that of Scotland, in that the syllabus for religious education is devised by the four main churches. They happen to all be Christian, and then they just spin their own view on it. And with an increasing sort of ethnic minority, people of no religion, people who are Muslims or Hindus or Jews, Sikhs, in the communities in Northern Ireland, you have strictly Christian education, which breeds more xenophobia. And the issues in Northern Ireland have gone from us and them, Catholics and Protestants, nationalists and unionists, which still exists to a certain extent, to Jews, Muslims. You know, they're the outsiders now. They're the people we're going to attack now. And it stops people from being able to understand each other unless we educate people together, unless our education system is open for children to ask questions rather than being sort of indoctrinated into any one faith or another. And we have an opt-out policy, which I'm sure you guys do as well in Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom do. And that opt-out policy in itself shows that there's discrimination. It shouldn't be an opt-out policy. There shouldn't be any reason that somebody who's a Jew or a Muslim or a Sikh has to leave a religious education class because it doesn't apply to them. It should apply to them. We should be teaching children about all world religions and all religious views and non-religious views. And this is maybe something that we'll discuss, but this is where I see an issue with the likes of Islamic schools or Jewish Orthodox schools or any sort of school which is a religious school. We need to teach our kids together. Then comes another issue. That even if you get taught, and Tehmina sort of mentioned this about cross-community projects in Northern Ireland, and they do exist, and we have youth clubs which are cross-community, and they're excellent. But what happens when they leave that cross-community class or that youth project or go out of school? They go back to their communities where they have had years of violence, where they have had family members murdered, and where hatred still exists. And, you know, I mean, I can turn around and I have had friends who have been, you know, well, not family members directly, but friends and family who have, you know, have been caught up in the troubles. I'm not one to hold a grudge, and I try to look at things in a critical point of view, but I could understand why somebody could see the other side as the enemy if their brother or their sister or their mum or their dad's been murdered. It's easy to understand. And so these kids will go back into their communities and they will get, you know, even if it's not in direct conversation with them, they will overhear things like, those Fenian bastards or those orange bastards, you know, and these things just continue on. You know, they don't stop, because historically these families have been in really tricky situations. So there are two things that need to be done with this. First of all, both communities need to own up to the atrocities that have happened and understand that they have put the other side, as they may call it, into a position where they allow them to hate them, and where they need to be able to say, yes, do you know what? We did things that were unacceptable. And not say, they're blaming us for doing things that are unacceptable. What about what they did? We call it whataboutery in Northern Ireland. And it happens all the time. What about what they did? Stop it. Put your hand up and admit what you did wrong and how you're going to change it. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to make more cross-community projects, or more integration between adults, between people who had gone through the troubles, between people who don't interact with each other. That, for me, is something that I would like to focus on at some point in Northern Ireland. There's so many issues. So yeah, that's part of the bit I would like to talk about sectarianism, and I would like to bring up as well what was spoken about earlier with regards to what happened in Orlando. And I think it's a very serious topic that we should, as an audience and as myself and Tehmina, should sort of expand on here this evening, because this does have relevance with in Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland, we still don't have equal marriage. You know, people are still given a kicking on a Friday night who walk out of the only 2 gay clubs in Belfast, you know, and there are only a couple of places for people to go who are from the LGBT community, and they're attacked, and they're attacked all the time, and they're attacked mentally and physically. And part of the problem and part of the reason for that is that we have a government that will not accept equality in marriage. We have a government that actually the vast majority of our politicians voted in favour of it, and then the main ruling party managed to veto it. And what does that say to our youth? It says, well, they're not the same as everybody else. And that, again, is xenophobia and breeds xenophobia and causes more and more issues. And this similar thing happens even if it's not the person who is xenophobic pulling the trigger. You hear it. I mean, I've heard it. I've seen it in Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds over the last couple of days. They're perverts. Oh, they're pedophiles. You know, oh, they might not pull the trigger. They might not go out and murder these people, but they give it. They give it the platform. They give it the ability for it to be able to happen. And until religious communities, and especially in Northern Ireland, because it is religious communities in Northern Ireland and fundamental religious communities that have this sort of hatred towards homosexuals, until we can sort of change that perception and give the overall perception in Northern Ireland that it's okay to be gay, we're just going to continue with the same issues. And that's me done, really. Okay, guys. An actual fact. So did you want to ask a question?
No, I
No?
just thought you were
Are you sure you don't want to ask a question? Maybe Tehmina can answer this then. What do you think the your organisation, British Muslims for Secular Democracy, what can you do to help change the opinions, or at least the sort of rhetoric that being homosexual is wrong?
Oh, there are a number of things that have happened quite relatively recently. Number one, Stonewall, the LGBT rights organisation, has put together its first multi-faith seminar, and this took place in February, inviting a wide range of speakers from religious and non-religious backgrounds, including Muslims, and they asked BMSD, my organisation, to give some advice on that. So that was a really positive step forward. On a religious level, I'm involved with something called the Inclusive Mosque Initiative, which is a pop-up mosque run by women and openly LGBT Muslims. It's one of the most progressive Muslim organisations we have in the UK. We have women coming to lead mixed prayers between men and women, which has caused quite a bit of controversy of late. Our people went to Bern quite recently, and they had a photo of them on Facebook with a woman leading mixed prayers with men and women standing side by side. And the level of hate and flack that they got on their Facebook page was so bad that they just had to delete the photograph. So the change is very, very slow at present, but hopefully with more of these organisations coming through in the last few years, more and more progressive organisations, we can make that change.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed the picture, and I did read the comments, and actually, in fact, on some of the comments, when you hover over somebody's name on Facebook, it tells you where they're from or where they're from. A lot of the people that were commenting, sort of really disrespectfully, are not from the United Kingdom.
That's right. Yeah.
Why do we not have more people like yourself speaking out? Because there's more than just you. There's more than just yourself and Hassan Radwan and a few other people. There are a lot of you. Why will they not speak out? I mean, is it for fear of shaming their family? Is it for fear of their own physical, something happened to them physically? Or is it because they're not clear in their own mind whether it's right or wrong? Or there's another reason. Are they frightened that they're going to go to hell? Is it going to be, am I going to go to the hellfire for agreeing that?
It's a mixture of all of those, but I think what happens is they look at people like myself and Sohail Ahmed and other sort of LGBT rights activists. I mean, this individual, Sohail Ahmed, he's actually been on the BBC Three documentary Reggie Yates and outed himself as a gay Muslim, which takes an incredible amount of courage. And he's actually been disowned by his family, and he has to live completely separately. He has to keep his address secret. So he's paid a very, very high price for that courage. And people see that the levels of flack and abuse that we get for putting these progressive messages out there of tolerance and inclusion and equality. And they look at that and they say, is it really worth it? Is it worth it getting that level of abuse? That the attacks are very, very personal in nature. That's another part of the problem. The critics don't actually engage with the arguments. They just want to attack you as a person. Yeah. I mean, I get that, but yes, it's worth it, is what I would say. It is worth it. Yeah.
And tell me, I mean, I know that you get support from the likes of Northern Ireland Humanists, Atheist Northern Ireland. We've always been supportive of what you guys do. But do you find that you get a lot of support from the sort of non-religious community, or from the Jewish community, or from other areas?
Yeah, but very much so. I mean, recently we organised a symposium on the government's preventing violent extremism strategy, and we had representatives from the Jewish community there, from various non-religious organisations, Christian individuals, people from all stripes, of all backgrounds. And the BHA, the British Humanist Association, they've been very supportive of us. I remember in 2014, I think I was the first speaker of faith who was invited to address their Atheist, Humanist and Secularist Students' Convention. And then AHS societies around the country invite me to give talks as well. And then the National Secular Society have been very supportive. They shortlisted us for the Secularist of the Year prize in 2013.
All right, okay, very good. Do any of you guys have? Go for it.
Do you find at the moment the conversation, I think the problem historically between everyone else and the Muslim communities is that the conversation has never been honest.
Yeah.
It's never opened up. And I know there's a lot of pressure coming from, ironically, the right at the moment to try and open up the dialogue, to create interface between all groups, an honest interface. Do you sense the British Muslims like secular democracy sense that that's attainable, that those spaces are beginning to exist, or is there still a close down whenever any real honest dialogue?
Well, I would say that our Facebook group is probably one of the best interfaces to have that kind of honest dialogue, which you both have mentioned. Both of you are members, very active members of that, so thank you for that. We have over 8,000 members in this Facebook group, and we discuss topical issues affecting Muslims on a daily basis. Sometimes these discussions can get quite heated, but myself and the other moderator, Dr. Shaz Mahbub, we try and keep it so that everyone follows the guidelines, and if not, then they're removed from the group if they can't discuss the issues sensibly. And the feedback we've had from certain non-Muslims who've joined that group is that had it not been for the group and the honest conversations within it, they actually would have become Islamophobic. So I think that's a real testament.
You need to transfer the culture, the ethos of the group into the real world.
Yes.
I know that's what you're trying to do by being here.
Yeah.
But we need that on a grander.
We do, and we've tried to we've organised several events like this where people can talk about progressive Islam and progressive Muslims and do so openly without fear of being attacked personally. And we've hosted a number of events over the years, but again, the problem is of resources and our capacity as an organisation. We only have 2 part-time members of staff and 6 trustees, so we're a tiny, tiny organisation. Hopefully we'll grow in the next few years.
I think the gentleman is back. Yes. Yes.
Question is, see the way we're bringing children up. We don't emphasise the other people particularly to the state, that the main point through their own religion. People don't keep bringing children up to see another group as an enemy, which actually secures that group. Because if you get an enemy, if you do this through history, great leaders, whatever, if they get an enemy, knit your group together. If you know, like the Second World War, fighting the Germans, the Italians, if they all got together with the flag and everything, we were all, even people who were apart, like Scotland, England, we were all together to fight. So what my point is if we don't bring children up to see that everybody else has got their own point of view, and that every person has a right to their own point of view, and their own freedom of expression as a religion, or a sectarian, whatever, you're going to always have this. And what we're going to do is look at the Islamic groups who brought kids up to believe that this other part is real enemy. And if you kill one of them and you die, you go straight to heaven. Because that's the best part of the thing you can be. That's the best thing. And seeing they do that, they're all loved by their own group, that extremist group. And then last thing about this, if you put people like Donald Trump saying, all Muslims have no come to America or whatever, where are they going?
Yeah. I mean, the other issue is with what Donald Trump says is that this really gets me. I think people forget that religion isn't a race. You know, you get ginger-bearded, and there's a lot of ginger-bearded Muslims right now.
Yeah,
but there's, you just get like, you can be white. You can be a white Irish Muslim. You know, I have people who I know who are acquaintances. I would even go as far as to say friends that say, we don't want them here. And I was like, well, what, you don't want Paddy from down the road, who's now a Muslim, living in his own country? He's never left Northern Ireland. He's just decided now to become a Muslim. You know, you can't throw an ideology out of a country. Mm-hmm. But you're right in saying that, you know, children have to be educated together. And in actual fact, in Northern Ireland, I would blame the Catholic Church for stopping people being educated together, because the Catholic Church are the ones that want to keep a stranglehold on their Catholic schools. And what in Northern Ireland they have proposed is what's called shared education. And shared education is worse than the segregated education that we have at the minute. Because what shared education is you all wear the same school uniform. You might have a leisure centre that you all go to, which is situated between two schools. But when you come into the school driveway, that you all walk up together, shared, will say, you guys go over there and you go over there. And it's actually enforcing even more so that you're different. And somebody, actual fact, it was the interview that I was having earlier with Julia from the Sunday Times. I'd said to her, you know, people always say, let's celebrate our differences. Let's celebrate the things that make us the same. You know, let's celebrate the things that we have in common. Yes, it's good to celebrate difference. It's nice to know that everybody's different. But really, it's these things that we have in common that will bring us together. And years ago, when I was 16, I worked in a car wash. And I worked with a couple of guys who are from a really staunch Protestant area in Belfast. And my mum and dad were going on holiday, and we were going to have a party in the house. And I actually knocked about with a lot of Catholics. And so we had a party in the house. Guys from the car wash came up. Guys from Serpentine Road came up, Catholic friends of mine. And these four guys, two from both different sides of the community, were like carbon copies of each other. And they're proper, really, really good banter, you know, really quick-witted. And the four of them got on like a house on fire the entire night. They had a brilliant night together, the bundle of laughs. And the next week when I was in the car wash, friend Willie said to me, he said, "Boy, where was that guy Pete, those guys Pete and Dee from?" I was like, "Oh, they're from the Serpentine." And they were like, "Oh, White City," which is another Protestant area. And I was like, "No, on down the Serpentine." And he was like, "They were Catholics?" I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "I didn't expect Catholics to be like that." Now, this is a guy, now I was only 16 at the time, but this guy was in his mid-20s. And I'm thinking, you know, at that time, I couldn't get my head around it. It was at that time that I started to think, shit, we've got problems here. You know, we've got problems if there are people who are 25 and 30 who have never met another Catholic or Protestant. Now, I know people had said to me, you know, older generations of people said to me, "Oh, it took me until I was 40 until I met a Catholic or met a Protestant." So I thought, that happened then. But when I realized that was happening when I was 16 or 17, you know, I was thinking, yeah, we have issues here, because if you know what, I don't know what you expected, I don't know what I mean, I couldn't even frame it in my head. What do you expect to be different? Horns, you know. Because there is the old one, oh, you know, he's a Protestant because his eyes are closer together. You know, one of those ones that's like, I don't know whether I know that that's a joke, but maybe these people in these communities think this is real. Yeah, if you're a Catholic, you've got, you know, your eyes are on either side of your head and you look like a fish. I don't know. So, you know, you're right. We need to educate together.
So, does the source of this sectarian violence in the religious organisations? Oh, possibly, but I think it only flourishes because it is fostered by governments online. And you can go back to what is called communal violence in the Indian subcontinent, so between Hindu and Muslim.
Yeah.
Back to the British rule, and they fostered it there, as they did in the Northern Ireland. So I think it's that source, that encouragement.
Northern Ireland's a bit of a tricky situation in that the British, look, nobody wants us. You know, the south of Ireland don't want this. You know, you have people who are nationalists who say, we want to be part of the Republic. And people down south are going, we don't want those nutcases. You know, we don't want part of that. And then the British government has kind of turned around and went, do you know what, guys? You're even too bonkers for us. Just deal with your own problems, you know. So we have a devolved government where we have a bunch of MLAs, and the two leading parties are Sinn Féin and the DUP. Now, Sinn Féin are a socialist party to a certain extent, and you know they have some progressive values, but they still don't want an integrated education system. You know, they're only up for going as far as shared education. The DUP, on the other hand, who are the Democratic Unionist Party, who I still think that there's a case there for false advertising. They are a Christian party. You know, they believe in Christian values, as they say. Well, they call it Christian values. They're the ones who have blocked equality in marriage. They're the ones who are turning around and saying having an abortion is a sin and it's never going to happen here. You know, they're the ones whose MLAs, and this astounds me as well. They have an MLA who went out campaigning, knocked on the door of a lesbian couple, and then started giving her abuse on her door. And this was on, this was recorded. I think it was recorded on like, audio recorded, and this went out all over. And he got stacks of abuse about it. You're wrong. That's completely wrong. He said something along the lines of, people who are homosexuals are more likely to be pedophiles. Really, really wrong things. We had an election a month ago. He got voted back in. He got voted back in, like, at the drop of a hat, without any problems. And the thing is, as you say, you think you're sort of saying that the British have done this, and yes, divide and rule, and historically, I think the British have done that. I think the concerns now for the British government are the likes of Nicky Morgan, the education minister, who's pretty fundamental herself as a Christian, who is sort of she's all up for academies, she's all up for faith schools. That is no way for us as humans. And as a humanist, I believe in equality, and I believe in teaching people together, and I believe that we're all the same in many respects. How are we meant to move forward? How are we meant to understand each other if we don't even socialize or educate ourselves together? So I don't know if it's the divide and rule thing is going on so much, especially in the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. I think the UK government have just went, Northern Ireland, you just get on with it. But what we're actually pressing for as Northern Ireland Humanists is that the UK government take some responsibility, because as it is at the minute, the sort of human rights laws and equality laws, we deserve them being part of the UK, and they're leaving the Northern Ireland government to decide what equality laws we have. And in actual fact, we're going to have to force their hand and say, do you know what? We're part of the UK. We deserve the same rights as everybody else. So we will be pressing on that in some way.
Just a question on the back of that. The Human Rights Act, I know there's been a lot of talk about us leaving the Human Rights Act and adopting a British Bill of Rights, but obviously if this were to happen, it would breach the Good Friday Agreement. Yeah. So what kind of activism is happening around that in Northern Ireland?
None. The first thing is that the Bill of Rights that the UK government were meant to organise, they were meant to put that out about 2 or 3 months before the election, and they didn't. I was told by the Human Rights Consortium, we're going to have a Bill of Rights, or at least a potential Bill of Rights. It never came about. I would say the reason it probably didn't come about is because they probably forgot about Northern Ireland, and then went, oh no, Good Friday Agreement, that's included in European Convention on Human Rights, and this is going to be an issue. So Northern Ireland and the south of Ireland actually wrote a Bill of Rights as well about 7 or 8 years ago. It was like a cross initiative. It was really, really good. It was meant to be great, and this is great. Northern Ireland and the south of Ireland working together, and supposedly it's very good. I've never seen it because it was shelved. Mm-hmm. It was written and then shelved. So the issues that you have is if we come out of Europe, forgetting about how that affects the Good Friday Agreement, what it does affect is that we will have to have border control again. And sorry? Yeah. So Northern Ireland, because we're part of the United Kingdom, will have a border again with the south of Ireland.
But when Ireland's independence, initially in Britain recognised their independence, there was a common travel area, agreed between the two countries where they wouldn't have border control, and it allowed freedom of movement and free trade. And also that was before the establishment of the European Union.
No, but that can't be right, because in 1994 we still had border patrols.
Yeah, were they taking cousins? Were did you get a visa?
No, you didn't do that, but we had border controls going between the north and the south. But the thing is that if we have common travel agreements, I mean, if somebody comes as a migrant to the south of Ireland, they could easily go into the north of Ireland and then over to England. Yeah. So they will have to have, if we're coming out of Europe because of the influx of immigrants, as the Out campaign are saying, there will be a border control. You know, it's. I mean, there's probably no problem for people from the south of Ireland travelling around the rest of the United Kingdom, but I would hazard a guess there will be border control, and if that is the case, they're going to have to put security forces back onto that border control, and the biggest issue is, where are the borders? They're in what's known as bandit country in Northern Ireland, which is strongholds for nationalists or for Republicans. And at the minute we have a new group called the New IRA who actually murdered somebody a number of weeks ago, and their strongholds are the likes of South Armagh, you know, border towns. So what will happen is eventually somebody will be shot, somebody will be injured, somebody will be murdered. And what that leads to, I can't tell you, but I would guess it leads to more violence, because violence, you know, leads to more violence, as the way I've seen it anyhow. But you might be right. Maybe you're right. Maybe there is something there that I just have totally overlooked. I don't know. I'll look into that one, actually. Wikipedia? Did you just tell me you got your information from Wikipedia? No, there'll be a border again, so there will, and there'll be more deaths and... Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, there was a man over here. I kept seeing an arm. Is he gone? Oh, boo. Sorry, I was so trying to get to him. Okay, I'll back out now.
So my question is, as an ex-Muslim Kurdish guy who was born in Baghdad, who was very familiar with sectarianism, Sunni Shia and stuff, my question is, in North Ireland seems more political, religious overtone, and with Islam community there's a more theological divide. How easy for you guys to counterbat orthodoxy theological divide, despite being impacted by foreign issues, whether it's Syria and Iraq? How is it easy for you guys?
Well, at BMSD, we're actually not a theological group. We're engaged. Where our main focus is civic engagement and equality and human rights. So I find that when you argue for a lot of these issues, like LGBT equality and women's equality and so on, if you do it from an equalities and human rights perspective, you're far more likely to get ahead than if you do it from a theological perspective, because then it just turns into a theological tit for tat. My scholar is bigger than yours, and you never end up resolving the argument. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for those theological debates. There very much is, but other groups have specialised in that, such as the Muslim Educational Centre of Oxford, which is again another progressive and forward-thinking group, and the Inclusive Mosque Initiative, which is again their focus is more on religion rather than civic engagement.
But is that not a really tricky situation? I mean, if you're taking it from an equality and human rights perspective, and you're dealing with people who are maybe, you know, who are orthodox in their thinking, the human rights and equality issue does not matter. You know, it's their interpretation of their scripture that matters to them. That is the key important thing to them. You know, that's what's important to them, not equality. You know, so. But
then we turn it around and say that if, as a Muslim or individual or as a Muslim community, you're advocating for the rights of your own community using equality and human rights laws, then the very least you can do is reciprocate and extend those same rights to other minority communities, including LGBT people. So, for example, mosques or Muslim organisations should not be able to discriminate against LGBT people who are applying to them for jobs, for example.
Yeah.
And then we do sort of incorporate bits of, well, theological references, but we always make clear that our main concern is equality and human rights. Yeah, and in all our documentation, that comes first.
I think, I mean, if any of you, I think it got turned into a blog post today. So Tehmina's blog today was, on her post on Facebook, was very, very good. It was about, you know, who says what about what had happened in Orlando and how it's always this, you always hear the same sort of nonsense to a certain extent. And it was very good. And one of the things that I like to do, and Atheist Northern Ireland like to do, and now as Northern Ireland Humanists we like to do, is to promote progressive voices. So we work with the Interfaith Forum, we work with Tehmina. There's another guy called Hassan Radwan who's really, really good, and I really like what he says. And today he posted something really poignant about Islam and about how there is actually no real reference to homosexuality in Islam, and you know, the story of Lot was about accepting people in and being accepting, and it was actually about rape rather than homosexuality. And I really liked it. And then my issue is this apologetics? You know, is this what this is? You know, so I'm always walking a fine line as an atheist and as a humanist between sort of saying, is this apologetics, or is this something that I want to support? You know, and
I follow Hassan as well.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing.
Today that post, yeah.
I was like, which side is he coming from? And he does that frequently.
Yeah, but he does it very well. yeah, he does. That's exactly what. I mean, today when I read that, I thought, yeah, I agree with that, but I'm pretty sure that's apologetics. I don't know what to do here. Am I meant to write something like, oh, I don't like that, Hassan, or thumbs up? Yeah.
I don't think you can really make that argument with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is obviously like it's a fantasy story anyway. Yeah. Because it includes the part where Lot offers his daughters to the raving mob instead of angels. So it's obviously the Old Testament they're fine with rape. It's just as long as it's heterosexual and you pay some money to the family and you marry them after.
Yeah. I mean, there's look. I mean, this is something else for me. I mean, it's great having dialogues with Tehmina, because Tehmina very rarely, if ever, brings any theological argument into it. You know, because if it got down to that, I don't think myself and Tehmina could probably talk to each other, because I'd just be going, no, I can't do this. But at some point, you are going to have to. I mean, this is the reason that I like Hassan, because he is looking to bring sort of some reform to the way that people of the Islamic faith take Scripture. And I know you don't take it as the literal truth. I know that you don't do that. But a bucket load of people do.
Well, this is the problem. I mean, progressive interpretations of things like the story of Lot in relation to homosexuality, they're great. And there are many groups that put them out there, like Muslims for Progressive Values, a USA-based group. But the thing is, they can only take you so far, because scholars like Scott Sirajul Kugel, who's written a book on homosexuality in Islam, while I really respect his scholarship, I'm well aware that it's a very fringe interpretation. And if you go to any mainstream Islamic bookstore, you're not going to find a book by Scott Sirajul Kugel on homosexuality. You're going to find really strict, rigid, and actually quite hateful interpretations by Deobandi and Salafi preachers. And this is the biggest problem.
Okay. Yes.
It's been a very interesting discussion. I'll try and marshal my ideas as well as possible. I think the first thing would be, would you agree that secularism has suffered because as a society we've sacrificed universalism? Particularly in the Muslim context, I spent 3 years living in Tower Hamlets and wrote my dissertation on segregation within Tower Hamlets. Communitarianism has very much taken the day. You mentioned, Boyd, that the steps forward in Northern Ireland are largely because of cross-cultural initiatives. Do you think that a lack of cross-cultural initiatives has been harmful to kind of de-ghettoising Muslims and Islam and creating a broader secular society?
I think that, for instance, atheism is seen as a dirty word. You know, it took us, when we set up Atheist Northern Ireland, it took us a little bit of time to decide, is that what we call ourselves? Are we going to sort of make people go, oh no, I don't want to be part of that? We were sort of thinking, are we the secular society? But what we realized is that we needed a platform to be able to speak on the same platform as religious people, and atheism is considered a protected belief, so we took on the name Atheist NI. Secularism is becoming a dirty word as well. And there's a number of reasons for that. The main one being that people don't understand what secularism is. The amount of times that I have to explain to Christians, secularism is not here to stop you having your faith. It is here to actually protect you and protect you to be able to have the beliefs that you want to have, and for me to have the beliefs that I want to have. And part of the problem for that is, now I did a debate on secularism there a couple of weeks ago, and I was reading about French secularism. And in actual fact, after reading quite a bit about it, I thought, you know what, French secularism's got it nearly spot on. It's got it nearly right. But there are just a couple of things that they've thrown into the mix that then make it look like state-imposed secularism, banning the burqa.
Yeah.
You know, turning around, they made sort of secularism points for schools, and one of them was no religious, dress or crosses or anything like that.
Yeah.
And you might turn around and go, okay, that's okay, because what we're trying to do is, in sort of public life, you don't have any sort of religion. The state doesn't have any religion, whatever. But where does public life and private life cross over? Private life and public life crosses over when I walk out and I want to go into a school, or so kids, if they're Christians, should be able to wear crosses. If you're a Muslim, you should be able to wear a burqa. Now, I have other issues with the burqa other than what the French sort of government are saying, which is they shouldn't be wearing it. We're a secular country, and in actual fact, that the reason that they banned the burqa was because there was a robbery in a post office in 2012, where 2 people went in burqas and robbed the place. We don't even know if they were Muslims. So that's an issue in itself. But yeah, secularism has become a dirty word, and I think it's up to rational, well-meaning people to be who to try and explain that as much as possible, what secularism is, how it protects minorities, how it protects everybody. Because it's I don't know what. So sometimes I wonder what is it people have in their head that they think secularism does. I think they think, oh, this just stops my religion. I mean, there are stacks of highly religious countries around the world that are secular. America, the States is a secular country, and Christianity thrives there.
Secular on paper, but obviously
Yeah.
still have a lot of influence in the government.
Yes, of course, the groups like
It's
that do.
secular in parts and not in others.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not totally.
It's not. No. Of course, you're always gonna. I mean, because here's the thing: in not having state funding, but the churches not having state funding, they've had to go out and make themselves money. And what they find is there are bucket loads of people who'll give over their money to get into heaven. So you have these huge evangelical organizations that have massive events with people giving over plenty of money, and they're powerful. And that's why, in actual fact, it's the American organizations that fund a lot of the organizations in Northern Ireland that are stopping the likes of abortion coming through. There's the Evangelical Alliance in Northern Ireland that is funded a lot by American organizations. There's a Christian Alliance, which is an American organization. It's the American organizations that were Christian organizations that were promoting in Africa to kill gay people or to imprison them. So does secularism work? I'm starting to doubt myself now. Secularism is there to protect people. I think it's up to us to be able to go out there and discuss that with people. And the guy I had a debate with the other week, in actual fact, when we, myself and a couple of people, the audience members, explained to him what ideal secularism would be, he was like, yeah, I would agree with that. And at the very end of the conversation, because it sort of went way off tangent, I'd said to him, okay, let's pull this back. If we could have ideal secularism, would that be a good thing? Could we work on that? And if we could just define it together as a Christian and as an atheist or as a humanist and Sikhs and Muslims and whatever else, if we could get together and define that and understand what secularism is and what way it should be applied on our society, would you be down with that? No, he was an evangelical Christian and he just went no. So it's like, okay, where do you go from there? And that's where the issue then, I think, comes with people who are highly religious within an Islamic community. Does equality and human rights matter to them? If you feel that you're the chosen people, or that your religion is the right one, or that you've got the right one, would you really care about anybody else's?
No, a lot of these organisations, they only give two hoots about equality and human rights for opportunistic reasons, because it helps them advance their own tribal or communitarian interests. They don't really care about equality and human rights for other communities.
Yeah.
And this is something that BMSD have tried to highlight. And we've always spoken about how secularism benefits everyone, including Muslims. And actually, if you are Muslim living in the UK, it's probably the best place to be a Muslim in terms of the religious freedom you get. I mean, we have halal food provision in schools, in prisons. We have, I mean, so many different mosques of all different stripes. We have different Muslim groups being consulted on national legislation, and not just one representative of a particular sect, but different sects and Muslims of all different stripes.
I mean, one of the things I like to say is, like, myself and Tehmina are up here. We're discussing this as some sort of authority on the issue, and maybe Tehmina is. I don't always know if I am. But I would like to ask you guys the question. You know, what do you think can be done to promote secularism? Because the thing is, we are two people, and yet we're sitting in a room with another 30-odd people in here, and you guys will be able to answer the question just as well as I will, and you guys might even be able to help me frame an argument as to how we go forward and how we, myself and Tehmina, create a better, secular democracy in the countries that we come from, Northern Ireland and England. So
I think that's an excellent question, and I like this, opening it to the floor. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Because I want to be able to call on everybody. Okay, well, we'll start with the gentleman in the back again, and then we'll go to you on the side.
I read a book recently by the Dalai Lama, who, as you probably know, he won the Nobel Prize for Peace, and he was put out of his own country by the Chinese, so he knows a lot about aggression. Stays in India now. But his book was basically saying, beyond religion, we need to develop a set of values that can embrace religious and non-religious people. And his main values he was saying is that we're all interconnected. That after we're all interconnected, we all need love. You get it as a child, you develop that. But he's saying it's really a lack of good inner values that's causing all the problems. And he said we've got all these values in the religions. It's like love, charity, hope, all the good stuff that's in the Christian religion. And there's a lot of good stuff in all the different religions. Do unto others as you do unto you. But basically, if we can get a set of values that can embrace non-believers and believers, so he said it's a lack of inner values.
I don't know about that. I mean, because for me, I always think, the sort of religious values are the obvious ones. I don't think you need to tell me those ones. If I had never come across any scripture, I think those ones are ones that we I think they're sort of socially evolved traits that we have. I think those already exist. I agree with what you're saying. I just don't like the idea that we sort of say that these are the right values for somebody to have, because I also think morals are...
He also said there was too many Muslims coming into Europe.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that we do find. I mean, sometimes when what I would like to hear is what your opinion is, rather than what the Dalai Lama's is, because what I do find is.
Interpretation of anything that creates your emotions. So if you interpret the book of the exact absolute truth of the Bible, and that anybody didn't believe that as an infidel, the actual interpretation, that will create the emotion of hate and probably the desire for revenge.
Yeah.
A good example was the guy who just killed these people today. In America, he said he got angry because he seen two gays kissing. He interpreted that in his way that was all wrong, and always got the hate that was part of that the extremist religion. So with that interpretation, even though it murdered all these people and taking revenge. So it's your interpretation that causes you to act. So what kind of interpretations are people being taught for children? Well, you can't really talk to you, but to guide them in the better interpretation, where they say, we're not in the absolute, we've not got the absolute truth. It's only an interpretation.
Well, that's the thing, but we were talking about Hassan Rabwan. That's kind of what he's doing with regards to sort of religion and how people interpret it. And Hassan does it really well. As we were sort of saying, it's hard to decide whether is this apologetics or not. Has anybody else got any other ideas that maybe we could do socially?
Sorry.
I was going to say, I think it's, I think it's got to be rooted in education, because if you don't begin there, you're not going to get anywhere.
But this, I agree.
I grew up even in Glasgow,
Yeah.
a Catholic school down the road, which we had to pass on the way to which I didn't know was a Protestant school or a Church of Scotland school. So you've got that from childhood onwards. And Glasgow's changed its ethos greatly, as Northern Ireland has, but without education, you don't understand the meaning of philosophy. And one thing that Islam is desperately lacking is the understanding of philosophy. There is no philosophy in the Quran. The Quran is
I don't know about that. I mean, well, there was a lot of great sort of Islamic philosophers. Whether the
Ibn
Quran.
Sina, for example, in the golden age of Islam, there were many philosophers. Yeah.
I mean, that's maybe been shut down. Yeah, it's not mentioned in the Quran, and that's maybe been shut down quite a bit.
You don't teach them philosophy, and that is the big problem, because you don't understand anything beyond the bounds of where the book. It's like the Old Testament. Where did that come from? It wasn't obviously given by God to Moses or whoever. It's been created by a number of different prophets contributing over a period of time. Same with the Quran. We're just understanding now that the Quran is not a book given to Muhammad by.
Okay, so here's another question for you then. How do you do that? Because here's one of the issues that we have come up against in Northern Ireland. The education system at the minute, I sort of mentioned this, it's the four main churches that devise the religious education syllabus. So it's 4 Christian churches, so it's pretty much discriminatory from the offset. And it's only in Key Stage Level 3, which is sort of your GCSEs, that you get to experience other world religions, and that's only Islam and Judaism. Now, we only have two training colleges for teachers in Northern Ireland, the Catholic one and the Protestant one. And they don't know, actually, how to teach anything else other than Christianity. And some of them might be great teachers, some of them might be very critical about the Bible, some of them might open that up for their students to be able to sort of criticize and look at the text and decide what they get from it or what they think it means. But we only have 500 odd Muslims in Northern Ireland, a couple of hundred Jews. I think our biggest communities outside of Christianity is actually those of the of no religion. But how do you have that happen? How do you have a school teacher teach about Islam and teach about the philosophy of Islam when they probably don't know that much about Christianity? So my
the secular society, Scottish Secular Society, is addressing that question to the Scottish Parliament at the moment. To remove unelected religious representatives from education committees, or at least not remove them, but have people elect.
So I'm going to rephrase my question to you guys. What's the solution, rather than not just what's the problem or what can we do? What is the solution? Is there something that people can think of here that is outside the box that we can do?
Get rid of the church.
Get rid of it. But there was somebody at the back had their hand up there. Go for it. Well, go in the box and let me hear in the box.
It's in the box. It really refers to something you said, telling the story of the party with the Catholics and the Protestants. The party, and in my own life I lived with some Malaysian guys who'd come over on exchange in first year at uni, and repeatedly there were wee things where they were like, we didn't know an atheist would be like that,
Yeah.
Oh, great. But simply, throughout history, if you're going to dehumanize another group, you've got to dehumanize them. And that is hard to do when you actually confront that other group. So the simple thing that you can do, and you must do, is a practical idea, is just encourage people to
physically integrate.
Integrate physically and socially, do things together. Whatever the thing that they're doing is maybe second.
Okay, and tell me this: do you guys up here have like an interfaith forum?
We do.
You do?
We do. Actually, one of our officers is a member of the interfaith group here, and I'll be attending the women's interfaith group this week.
Great,
Yes.
great, okay. And do they do many events? The one in Belfast do like a monthly event each month where somebody maybe from the Buddhist community will sit and talk about some topic.
The problem with the
anything like that?
interfaith groups, I ran into this in Texas. No surprise when you hear what I'm about to say. But even more so, it seems like here is interfaith groups often end up being various Christian denomination groups. And I don't have an answer for how to change that except to just show up, which is what I do, and say, hi, I'm here. You're going to accept me for tonight.
So our interfaith forum in Northern Ireland is actually pretty diverse. You know, it does have Christians, Sikhs, Muslims, Baha'i, Buddhists, Jews. You know, it has a number of different people on it. And when I first met them last year, and I was part of Atheist NI, and I'd said, like, maybe we could become part of your group, and they were a bit like, oh, I don't know about that because you don't have a religion. And then the more we spoke and became part of the Humanist Association, and they realised that in actual fact there are some things that a Humanist Association has in common, like we do funerals and weddings and baby naming ceremonies. We're at the minute training people up for non-religious pastoral care for prison services and for universities. Sorry, prisons and prisons and hospitals. So I think they started to realise, well, look, these guys actually have a lot of things in common with what we do, and I think they're just about to accept us on it. Maybe a thought up here would be I mean, one of the things is, could we change the name to Interbelief? But well, that's secondary really to being on it and being with a bunch of progressive people. If there is an interfaith forum and it's open for people to attend and go to the meetings, I would suggest that, you know, you guys go to those as well. You know, go and speak to people, even if it is just a bunch of Christian denominations. You go and speak to them and you know, go work on that dialogue as well. I mean, I know that's what we are doing in Northern Ireland, and in actual fact, we have full support from the Interfaith Forum on the changes that we would like to see in the Northern Ireland religious education syllabus, and with regards to integrated education. In actual fact, the Interfaith Forum in Northern Ireland was set up in 1995 after the priest process came in 1994, and they decided that they would allow the four main churches to devise the religious education syllabus. These people of faith turned around and said, no, this is wrong. You know, but they're not a very strong organisation in sort of support numbers financially.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Tehmina, I know you're in London, and London kind of has everything, but have you come across any of this interfaith effort there?
Oh, there's plenty. And the good thing about interfaith activities in London and the south of England more generally is that they always include humanists and atheists. So a few years ago, we put together something called People Like Us Interfaith, which was a day-long conference at the Wolf Institute in Cambridge, where we had Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, humanists, all coming together to talk about 4 topics: work, family, education, and bereavement, sharing good practice on each of them, because they're issues that affect all of us. And this was an example of a pioneering interfaith social action event, as opposed to just sitting down and having dialogue.
I think though it's maybe critically important to get this kind of thing in the schools, because if you run into that for adults, I think it's mostly going to be people like us, albeit of different religious backgrounds.
Yeah.
That in a sense, you can fall into preaching to different religions.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to stop.
So that's kind of why you want to get involved with other groups. I mean, about 2 years ago, I had Richard Dawkins in Belfast, and he was over for a screening of The Unbelievers, and then we did a Q&A. And after it, when we were walking out, I was like, does it not get a bit boring preaching to the converted every time? And he was like, yeah, it does. You know, he's like, if I could get into a room with sort of people of religion, you know, to be able to explain my ideas to them and to be able to have a dialogue with them, it would be better. And I said, well, you need to get off Twitter if you're going to do that to start off with. You know, and he's actually, you know, he comes across really sort of hardcore on Twitter. He's actually, when he's explaining himself, he's very, very good at it. When he's sitting there, he is not rude. He is not there to attack your opinion or your values. he will 100% question them, and because he's highly intelligent, you'll be left there thinking, shit, I'm wrong again, you know. But you know, even for somebody like him, he's sort of thinking, yes, kind of always preaching to the converted. I guess this is what's maybe nice about having somebody like Tehmina here, who, you know, if you've got a I would guess the vast majority of people who are secular in this room are also of no religion. I would guess the vast majority of the skeptics in the room are probably veering down the route of being atheist or no religion as well. So, yeah.
So my take on it is, Scotland has 1.7% of its population as Muslim. Yet they have a hotline to every key leader in this country. They can pick up the phone and get Nicola Sturgeon on the end of that phone at the drop of a hat. Now, until groups like humanists and atheists are allowed into that level of communication channel, we're never going to get progress. We're never going to move forward. It's all right going to interfaith groups. It's all right discussing what best practices are being shared and who's doing what where and how well they're doing it, managing it. But really, what we want as a secular group is to attack their privilege and to take it away from them. And that's what we can't lose sight of when we do attempt. Maybe there is a roundabout way, a backdoor way of doing this. But religious groups are always wary that when you want a dialogue with them or you want a dialogue about them, it's to take away their favourite toys. It's to take away their privilege. And that's schools, that's health, that's their interference in legislation. And that is the middle of where we need to be.
The guy I had the debate with about secularism the other week started saying, well, no, Christians are getting things taken away from them, and he sort of gets sidetracked, and he was like, what was I saying? I said, oh, you were saying you didn't like the playing field being levelled. You know, and that is it. You know, there does need to be a level playing field. But
Would be 52% are now subscribed to no religion.
Yes, exactly.
And there is no representative body that has the same equivalent privilege.
Exactly. But if you think about it in two ways, first of all, those from a religious belief, and I would guess because there are some Muslims who have a chip on their shoulder, and there are plenty of Christians who have a chip on their shoulder and think that everything's being taken away from them, and that, you know, everybody's out to get them. And also because there is some bigotry and hatred, and there is anti-Muslim sentiment that happens, that there is this sort of idea that the government are like, we have to be politically correct and give them something more. Now, I don't think that is right. But I also think that some of these communities, and Christian communities and Muslim communities, kind of cut themselves off. And they don't maybe go out and engage with people who aren't religious. And we can say, it's their fault, they don't engage with us. Maybe we need to take the higher ground to some extent and go and engage and break down those barriers and have them sort of going, well, do you know what? These guys are all right. I mean, I'm sure, I know that this happens in the Muslim community, because I have had friends, people who I've met, who you start to break down the stereotypes with. You know, they think that you're religious. I mean, I had a guy, a Sikh guy, who was talking about religion or something, and he was like, so what God do you believe in? I was like, I don't believe in God. And he was like, that can't be true. That can't be true. You're a good person. You have to believe in God. And it took a number of weeks to sort of break down those barriers of him going, this can't be true, for him to understand that atheists weren't bad people.
Okay,
You know?
I'm going to jump in because we are getting close on time, and I want to make sure everybody gets to talk, and this woman has been so patient.
Thank you. I wanted to raise two quick little points quickly. One of them is, I'm not sure to what extent it's happening at the moment or to what extent it has potential, but are newcomers into faith, like converts, particularly from other cultural backgrounds, do you think at any stage that they will have the potential to soften some of the orthodoxy? I don't either. My second point was, and this is one of the things that I feel I sort of fail as a secularist. I knew somebody, she was from the LGBT community, she wore a hijab, but for her it wasn't remotely religious, it was a cultural identity symbol, and she got abuse for not being Muslim enough, she got abuse for being Muslim, she was neither, and one of my ex-colleagues wore an emblem of St. John. It wasn't remotely a religious symbol, She was asked to remove it and work, but it was a gift from her father. She wasn't a practicing Christian. She'd never been. It was simply a gift from her father. Do we see the emptying of religious symbols as a form of secularism, or do we have to do away with them entirely?
Well, I don't think we should do away with religious symbols entirely. And in fact, I've actually spoken out against the niqab ban in France, which didn't make me particularly popular, although there were a number of people who came up to me and said they actually agreed with my position. BMST have always taken the position that we support restrictions of the face veil in certain settings where security is an issue, such as and also child protection, banks and nurseries and airport security and so on. But we've never supported a total ban for civil liberties reasons. However, we do think that there needs to be a more honest conversation about religious coverings for women, and this is not just face coverings but head coverings as well, and the degree to which they're mandatory, if at all, and why is it that Muslim women who choose not to wear these head coverings or face coverings end up being shamed and stigmatized in our communities. And there are already some initiatives taking place to explore these issues further. So my friend Rabiha Hanan has edited a book called Islam and the Veil, which features a contribution from a scholar, a liberal scholar named Osama Hassan, who actually says that the head covering for women is not mandatory. And this is still a pretty controversial position in Muslim communities, unfortunately, and it shouldn't be. And I think your friend should be more than welcome to join either Iman, which is the LGBT Muslim organization, or the Inclusive Mosque Initiative, which should both welcome her with open arms.
Yeah, I think Tehmina's right. If you're making, I mean, I have a sort of different opinion on this. If you make the decision yourself that you want to wear a religious dress, religious head covering, go for it. It's entirely up to you. I mean, I started to go one stage further by sort of saying, well, why is it that you're wearing it? You're telling me that you're not being oppressed, but is your religion maybe not oppressing you without you even realizing it? Is your text not oppressing you? But that's a whole other side of things. But yes, if you're making the decision yourself that you want to wear something, that's fine. What you said about people becoming converts or going into the religion, will that soften the religion? In my experience, converts are more hardcore than anybody else.
Yeah.
And people who convert from one side to the other in these things, takes a lot of time for them to sort of get their sort of their values and their approach to what they're trying to do, right? And sometimes it's understandable. If you had been in a religion where you were abused, or where you'd been told that God is real and you're going to go to hell unless you do these certain things, and you're about to become a preacher and whatever else, and then you realize, no, this is not for me. I'm an atheist. You could probably be very angry. So sometimes I can understand why there's sort of anger in people that come from religion to atheism, but when it's people converting from Christianity to Islam or the other way around, they tend to be pretty hardcore about what they're doing.
And I've noticed that female converts in particular, ones who wear the headscarf, they're treated as poster girls for the entire Muslim community, whereas someone like me who doesn't wear a headscarf and is very secular in my outlook would not be. So this is an issue as well. And I find that it takes converts on average about maybe 10 to 15 years before they mellow out, and this is based on my personal experience, knowing hundreds of Muslim converts and having been married and being married to one as well. So.